This is the story of Karosta, a historically, militarily, and architecturally unique complex now being developed into a single tourist site. At the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries, the Baltic Sea coast was the arena where the interests of two empires, Russia and Germany, clashed. The territory of Latvia was under the rule of the Tsarist Russia at that time, and Liepa was called Libau by the German and Russian communities. Since a strong German fleet had showed up in the Baltic Sea and Russia feared it might attack the Kurzeme coastline, it was decided to move the main Russian Baltic naval base from Kronstadt at St. Petersburg to Liepa. On January the 15th, 1890, Russian Tsar Alexander III signed the order to build a naval fortress in Liepa. The construction of the Liepa naval fortress Karosta was started. Engineer Colonel MacDonald was appointed as the general supervisor of construction and engineer Captain Zhitko the manager of concreting works. At the end of the 19th century, Liepa was 3 times smaller than today, yet it possessed several important advantages. It had a port that never froze over, it was the closest to the German border, and was a convenient location. The city was surrounded by the Liepa and Tosmer lakes. The Karosta Canal was excavated to the north of the city to accommodate the Russian Navy, and a military town called Karosta was developed next to it. A swing bridge was built to connect Karosta and Liepa. This is still the only functioning swing bridge in the Baltics. At the far end of the Karosta Canal, a ship repair basin was established with 2 huge dry docks, and a shipyard was built by the side of the canal. Karosta was intended as a location for more than 140 vessels. It is interesting to note that the very first submarines in Russian Empire were built in Karosta. Karosta was an autonomous town with its own administration, power and water supply systems, railway station, post station, and even pigeon post. The bustling military and social life in Karosta was in full swing. An incredibly luxurious officers' convention house was built for the recreation and relaxation of naval officers, and the pier right in front of it was always kept reserved for the Emperor's yacht Polar Star. Also, the heart of its spiritual life was built, St. Nicholas Maritime Cathedral. It was consecrated in 1903 at a ceremony attended by the last Russian Emperor Nikolai II and his family. The people working in state service in Karosta and their families were drawn from the Russian aristocracy. They lived in a closed environment and tried to compensate for their separation from Russia with an active cultural and social life. It was a wealthy, cultural, highly educated and intelligent community, and Karosta's environment developed accordingly. Historians still say that once it was a miniature St. Petersburg. The Russo-Japanese War, which broke out in 1904, also touched Liepa. Karosta was a starting point for the 2nd Pacific Squadron as it set off on its more than 7-month voyage halfway around the world to defend the interests of the Russian Empire in the Far East. However, they were severely defeated in the Battle of Tsushima, where the Russian Empire lost 30 warships and about 5,000 soldiers were killed. To commemorate the lives that were lost, a memorial site was established at St. Nicholas Maritime Cathedral. To protect Karosta, 14 artillery batteries were set up around Liepa, and it was planned to equip them with 227 cannons. Only a fifth of that number had been put in place by 1903. The experience of the Russo-Japanese War proved that the 12-kilometer firing distance of Karosta's cannons was no longer sufficient to protect the fleet if the enemy located in its long-range artillery on the hills surrounding the city. Therefore, the construction of the fortifications was stopped, Some cannons were transferred to Kaunas fortress in Lithuania, while others were simply used in the berths as ship mooring bollards. As for the fortifications, there were attempts to blow them up, but they did not work out as well as expected, and the forts in their original shape are still there today. In 1914, the World War I broke out, prompting the collapse of empires in Europe and the establishment of new states, among them the Republic of Latvia in 1918. But until the proclamation of the independent Latvia, its soil was ravaged by battles for 4 years. In August 1914 and the following months, Liepāja was repeatedly bombed from the sea by the German warships. Until November 1918, though, Liepāja was the rearmost base of the German occupation army. When Latvia became independent, the former enemies, the Germans and the Russians, were united under the leadership of von der Goltz and Bermont, who wouldn't hear of free Latvia. During the independence struggles, Bermontians tried to break into the northern forts and then into the city, but the heroism of Latvian soldiers forced both the German and Russian troops to flee. The Republic of Latvia received Karosta in a shabby and devastated condition after the German occupation. The Latvian army did not need so many buildings and these particular structures, so a part of this was used for civilian purposes. Karosta was the base for the hydroplane unit and our submarines Ruonis and Spīdola. The former Tsarist army barracks now house the Ventspils and Liepāja infantry regiments, as well as the Kurzeme artillery regiment. Karosta again led an active economic, social, and cultural life. Karosta is also closely related to the outstanding Latvian aviator and constructor of planes Herberts Cukurs. His piloting skills were proven by his reckless flight under the Kalpaka Bridge in the mid-1930s. Here in Karosta, Cukurs built the aircraft C-3 and named it the Duchess of Kurland. He flew it to Gambia in Africa on his world-famous flight and returned as the hero of Latvia. The world's largest newspapers wrote about this man from Liepāja, books were published and stamp series were issued in his honor. After this journey, Herberts Cukurs built another plane named 3 Stars and flew it to Japan. This flight of more than 40,000 kilometers also received undivided international acclaim. In the summer of 1940, the busy economic, social and cultural life was stopped by the Soviet occupation. The period known as the Horrible Year started. The communist terror continued until June 1941, when the World War II came into Liepāja, accompanied by German marches and the smoke of burning houses. After World War II, Latvia became one of the Soviet Socialist republics. Karosta was now a military base of the USSR, but Liepāja became a closed city, where even relatives from the countryside could not enter without special permission. The first newly built buildings in Karosta still respected the overall image of this neighborhood, but in the 1970s, the size of Karosta's population increased. Military families from all over Russia moved here to join their family members. The Soviet officers serving in Karosta because the Baltic states had the reputation of being the closest abroad. There was an increasing need for housing and new blocks of flats were built in record speed, chaotically changing Karosta's features. The House of the Lord was redundant in the Soviet Union, of course. Therefore, the gilded cupolas of the cathedral were covered with dull paint. The religious symbols were removed and it was turned into a sailors' club where the entertainment of the young guys was the priority. In the mid-1940s, the world got to know the concept of the Cold War, and the arms race between the two main opposing forces, the United States and the Soviet Union, started. The Soviet submarines were now based in the Karosta Canal. The American militaries were using satellites to find out whether Soviet submarines were in the port or had gone on intelligence operations to the coast of the Western countries. A special concrete hangar was built to conceal the exact location of the submarines within the port from the eyes of the enemy. The coastline of the present Baltic states was the external border of the Soviet Union at that time. In theory, the highest punishment in the Soviet Union was expatriation from the country. In reality, the communists put all of their efforts into trying to prevent anyone who would want to leave this country from escaping. People trying to escape from the Soviet Union almost always paid with their freedom and sometimes even their lives. Fortunately, in the early 1990s, the Soviet Empire ceased to exist and the last Russian army units left Karosta in May 1994. In the mid-1990s, Karosta had to start again virtually from scratch. After the withdrawal of Russian army, the military town suddenly became half empty, accessible to everyone, and a little intimidating. Karosta still displays many of the wounds and scars left by the changes of ruling powers and their epochs here. Nevertheless, Karosta is awakening into a new life, slowly yet steadily. Originally, Karosta was a separate town built just for military purposes. Now it has become an integral part of the Liepāja city. Instead of 30,000 soldiers, 7,000 Liepāja citizens live in the neighborhood. Today, commercial cargo vessels are moored at the berth in the Karosta Canal. The renewed Karosta Bridge can be crossed without the need to present a special pass. Also, some military facilities are located there, for example the Naval Training Center. The officers' mess gradually recovers its splendor. Today, Karosta is a popular tourist destination. The surfing club Rietumkrasts is operating here, and Karosta residents as well as visitors love to have a stroll along the almost 2-kilometer-long northern breakwater. To explore the northern forts, you can join a torchlight tour through the underground labyrinths or become a player in the spy game Escape from the USSR. Starting the game, you are taken back several decades to live through the episodes of our country's recent history, the Soviet occupation period. The game provokes the active participation of the players, making them think, search, run, hide, take decisions, and help each other. The task of the game is to overcome various obstacles through cooperation and acting together, and to find a friend who is not able to move without assistance and bring him or her to a safe place, a submarine. Already since the year 2002, the most popular tourist attraction in Karosta is Karosta Prison, where each visitor is sure to find something of interest to him or her: informative tours, a nerve-tingling reality show behind the bars, a prison-style meal, or an extreme overnight stay. Karosta's potential is not exhausted with all of this, of course. This place is very suitable for the study of art, history, architecture, and various cultural activities. Tourists come and go, but the daily life of Karosta moves on. Also, the cathedral has revived. The crosses once cut off have been replaced, and the gilded cupolas are again glittering in the sun. The soldiers no longer dance Kazachok and watch movies here. Instead of Lenin and Stalin, people now laud the glory of God. God bless Latvia, and sometimes remember Karosta as well, please.